Hello.
Okay.
Yep, all working.
These chairs presumably cost what?
Hello. You can do it on there, you don't have to take care.
Advertising, yes. Yes. Probably still in Charing Cross, pursuing his phantom top of his leg pains. Are they pains at the top of his legs? Nerves? Widen the arteries and veins? Who knows?
Oh, fingers crossed he gets better.
Yes, best.
Well, on a bad back tonight, well into
Yes.
insignificance,
The
really, didn't it?
it's the further cascade of his health problems, yeah.
Well, I saw him in the Legion the other couple of weeks ago. I bought him a.
Good evening, John.
Right, Dan, how are you? All right, how are you? Very well.
Hello, Graham is unfortunately either still or only just on the way back from Charing Cross. For all those examinations.
That is a different place.
Now you plants around. You're well.
Feeling all right, couldn't get over the weekend.
I think what it's worth it.
Yes, the further complication, it doesn't lead in itself.
No, no.
Yeah, so I'll be busking in from here on in.
Sure you'll do a great lusky job.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Good, good, good.
Well, I know Philip, I think I spoke to him yesterday.
Yeah.
Against the game. Ian's on his way. Oh, that's good.
Pulling over.
Okay, great.
It should be a great show for Christmas. It came up at apologize for getting to tour. Yeah.
I must admit, I don't take a great deal of attention to the law. Things like getting rid of the rapid banking rights at High Street, which
Yeah.
is just tidying up and bringing it up to date.
Yeah.
I'll emphasise that we want maximum time for the open debate, so there will be some housekeeping that we'll do at the beginning of the second part.
Yeah.
That's the.
Doing the last.
In the week or two, I finals in 1974. First night, South End, they're using hitchhiking to as far as I can, go in Germany and do catch it. Coach over
So actually, just. How are you? It's,
They.
recording it and we are live streaming it, but nobody knows. So if it works, we'll do it again next time. But
I mean, yeah, I mean. In case you are.
taking the cable off.
Okay.
Gizmo. What he was doing was pressing on the. Trying to get. Do that, it's a very bad touch.
Yeah, okay. Why not? Yeah, so it's not even a ballpoint pen and up to speed. Thank you for that. Otherwise, even with a recent inscription, he spent a weekend in Hillingdon. So do we all. He said it was better to see him. To face it. Yes.
But I didn't say that. I wouldn't deny that.
Well, I will make a brief allusion to that. I feel like there is a correlation and a previous history of positive work together. Just not also financial. To give you and what they showed up.
hello, I'm your size now.
Listen, I would die for your height. I really.
I would love to. Below the knees, I'd love to get rid of it.
I will.
Pain in the arse. And 2 or 3 inches off my arm, I'd love it. But I've just spent 5 days in the Netherlands.
Wow.
There was only twice I was the tallest person in the room by a foot. I didn't see anybody taller than me, but people close. It just doesn't happen now. Well, there's a lot of them over 6 foot, quite a few over 6'4". And my wife is from Singapore. And when I'm there, I'm 18 inches taller than her. So here, I can't stand up on the Piccadilly or Central Line track. But there, I could get decapitated getting on there in my feet. It is very different. But she fits in. I have to twist my hip because I can get something like that. Especially the Piccadilly line, if you're under one of those, just another 2 inches. Because they dug in with shovels in Victoria's time. Yeah. Well, the Metropolitan's nice, because I can stand up on that. I'm always on tech, yes. We're going to try and live stream it, but we've not told anybody. But if it works, we'll do it next time.
Oh,
Daniel.
you're right, I did recognise you on the newsletter. Can I just say to you, it might be a good opportunity to say that Annie and I have decided we need to design this year. This is the last year of doing it.
Okay, all right.
That's,
Thank you for doing it as well as you are. Wow, that's an impressive. All right, thank you.
Folks, how are we? All right? Peter?
Not thinking of getting the recording. It helps everybody. September 20th. Yeah, that's my job. Hello, everybody. Can I just check that you can hear from the PA? No. No. Sorry. No. I try not to shout. Are we any better? Not yet. Yeah, good. Thank you. Evening, young man. Hello, how are you doing? I know we're recording. But it's not being mainstream. Nobody knows it, we're doing it for next time, to check the work. But the cameras will be in the, we be in. Yeah. You'll be behind that, then you'll be. Nice, my, hello, boss. I'll do my best to get it. Last time I did the civic centre where it's. No, everybody.
Good evening. I wonder if I could ask everybody to take their drinks and sit down. I'd like to welcome you to the Bicycle Residents Association 2025 AGM. And those with a relatively good memory and given the age profile, probably a recent prescription, have noticed that I'm not Graham Bartram. Unfortunately, Graham, who many of you know, does have several health problems, has found another one. He spent the weekend at Hindon Hospital having multiple MRIs, and today has been at Charing Cross Hospital having ECGs. We advised him to take his time and recover rather than rushing to be with us this evening. A little bit of a rundown of what we've got tonight. We're very pleased to have Councillor Ian Edwards, the leader of the council, here to answer some questions that have already been sent to him, and hopefully, if we have time, some from the floor. There will be a brief chair's report. There will be a break, and then in the second half, there will be a couple of household matters for the RRA, and then there will be an open session, questions hopefully answered either by members of the RRA committee or our councillors. And I can see Councillor Smallwood, Councillor Riley, and Councillor Cawthorne here. Right, we're not expecting a fire drill rehearsal, so if you hear the fire alarms, it is for real, and hopefully everybody can see where the two fire exits are. I'm not going to point like a cabin crew member. Right, if everybody's ready, we're going to hand over to Ian Edwards, and I will run through the questions that have been sent to him. Sorry, Ian's going to speak first, then we have the questions.
However you wish to play it, I'm at your disposal. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How lovely it is to be here, and how lovely it is to see a full room. I hope that isn't a reflection of real concern about the council and more of one of interest. But I will happily answer any questions you may have of me in a few minutes. If you will just bear with me for a little while I just set a little bit of a scene with regards to the council and the position it finds itself in. One of the advantages of moving over to paperless working is that old speeches are kept and they're still here, and you can go back through them. And in thinking about tonight, I looked at what I said back in September 2023, and thought, did I keep my word? Have we lived up to our promise? And I did go through it all and did find some areas where, yes, we have to go a little bit harder, but by and large, we have kept our word. We have delivered what we said. Importantly, back then, we could foresee the pressure on council funding, and I said we will get through the challenge without going bust and without needing to go to government for help. And by the skin of our teeth, we have been able to do that. 1 in 4 local authorities in London haven't, and I don't criticise them. This isn't a case of these are badly run councils. This is a case of circumstances now beginning to overtake local authorities' ability to react. And I'll share some of those challenges with you. But not so long ago, the autumn budget. Understandably, the government took some action that it felt was necessary. It wasn't widely welcomed, and some of us in this room will have views on whether or not it was a good budget or a bad budget. But what it did do was set an expectation in the government, in the council, about how the increase in employers' national insurance would be funded for our own employees. At the time of the budget, the Chancellor said that local authorities would be fully compensated. And we built our budget on the expectation that that would be the case. And the consultation budget that we published back in December, had that assumption built into it. Come early February, we learned from the Chancellor that she was unable to keep her word, or the Treasury was unable to keep her word on that, and that they wouldn't be fully funding us. And as a consequence, we found we had a £500,000 deficit already being built into our budget. So before the start of the year, we would have been £500,000 behind. 2 days later, this is in February, we have to publish out our budget in February, and 2 days later, the Bank of England changed its forecast. It changed its forecast in 2 ways. One, it said growth won't be as strong as it had expected. That's fine, that doesn't directly impact the council. But what did directly impact the council was the Bank of England saying, we believe inflation is going to be a bit stickier than we had thought, so it's going to be a bit higher for a bit longer, and we think interest rates are going to be higher and longer as well. And of course, the interest rates and inflation being sticky do have direct impacts on the council's budget. And our head of finance looked at the numbers and said, we have to make additional provision for inflationary increases that we weren't planning back in December, which we now have to prudently plan for in February. And this resulted in a funding gap now, some matter of a fortnight before we had to agree the budget, of over £2.5 billion. And as a consequence, I took the decision, it was mine, that we needed to charge for green waste. And I regret that enormously. It is not something we sought to do, but in the time available to us, it was the only prudent thing to do, because to have drawn down further on our reserves would have exposed us to terrible weaknesses going forwards. And for me, the last thing we can afford to do is allow the government to come in, take control of what we do here, and tell us how we're going to run the council. Because we would immediately see your council tax rise enormously, and you would see things like our weekly bin collection being stopped straight away. And that is something that we will not stand for. So I hope you will understand that this is a feature we had designed. This is a feature that was necessary as a consequence of that particular budget. Now, the situation has got worse in the last few days, hasn't it? I mean, who cannot listen to the news or read the newspaper or just hear conversation and not be worried about where is all of this going to end? And even tonight, we're hearing about retaliatory tariffs and the impacts that's having, and the market is falling even further. Now, you might say, well, what's that got to do with the local authority? And I would say, well, it had 2 impacts. First of all, it's going to impact nationally the economy, and we've heard that already being said. that the Chancellor is going to have less headroom with regards to the budget. That's disappeared. And the expectation is that come the budget in the autumn, we might see taxes rise. But in the meantime, in June, there is what is called the funding settlement, when the government's determined what the funding will be for local authorities for the coming 3 years. And the message is quite stark on that one. Certain departments are going to be protected, which is a good thing. National Health Service is going to be protected, along with defence, so they won't be squeezed. Everybody else will be, and that includes the department that funds local government. And we have been here in the past, and it led to that period of austerity, where we saw real income to the local authority falling year after year after year. Now, I hope it won't be like that, but we are certainly going to face the squeeze in the short term, and I am expecting a more disappointing settlement in June than I was a mere week or fortnight ago before Trump did. So that has changed it, and we now have to be far more cautious in the way we go forward. We're going to have to be more restrictive in what we spend, and we're going to have to look at very clever ways for trying to ensure we stay afloat. Now that's the macro impact. Some of the less obvious impacts, or less obvious impact, is the fact that the hit on the market has hit probably a lot of pension holdings in this room. And probably if any of you have gone online and seen what your savings are worth, or your shares, or your stocks, or your pension pot, or anything else, you might have found they've gone down. Why is that a worry to the council? Well, we actually have to support a very generous pension fund for our employees. And built into our budget, it is there from the year 2026-27, so next year onwards, we were anticipating being able to reduce the pension contributions that we made because the stock market had been doing well. And we had a surplus in that budget, in the pension fund. And this is the local government pension fund. So all local authorities were thinking, oh, we can take a few £1 million here of saving and not spend quite as much on pension contributions. And that is built into our pension, into our budget. Present one now, you will see it, the year 26-27, we are anticipating being able to make a pension holiday of a small amount, some millions of pounds each year. But my expectation is that has been blown out of the water by the last few days. So that is another pressure that is immediately going to impact upon us as a consequence of our good friend, Mr. Trump. So, whilst it's quite a bleak outlook in terms of the income coming into the local authority, it has to be said that the challenging future is also matched by the growth in demand for our services. The increase in national insurance contributions and the increase in minimum wage, which is a good thing. It's right that people get paid well. They will disproportionately impact on services that we are reliant upon. We commission a lot of services, care services, just a little bit above minimum wage. And whilst we have always been above minimum wage payer, people like to maintain that distance, that separation. So if minimum wage is bumped up, everybody else expects their to be bumped up. And so we know that the cost of social care will go up. Local authorities collectively are not in a position to respond too favourably to that request. And social care providers are going to get squeezed. And we don't quite know where that's going to happen. Because whilst we might be willing to support a company, elsewhere a local authority might not. And that can undermine the sustainability of a company and cause impacts in our own borough, even though we are supported. So that is another challenge when it comes to the growth in demand. We're seeing an increase in cost rise. So that is a demand rise that we're seeing, along with just the number of people that are increasingly turning to the local authority for care support. We're getting older, we're living longer, and we are living with more complex and challenging health issues. Good news, that's good news. Come on, we must celebrate the fact we're here for a lot longer now. We expect to be here longer, but it is a challenge for a local authority to be able to manage that. At the same time as we have this demand pressure around social care, social costs, we have a very unusual demand rise in homelessness. You would have heard that across London, that London is suffering from an epidemic of homelessness. The causes of this will be multitude, and it's not for me to say why that's happened. It is happening. The private rented sector is collapsing, that there is withdrawing of the office of ordinary rent that we could have foreseen. And this is pushing more and more people towards the council. And those that have been in private rented sector, they've seen rents go up and up and up faster than their salaries have, and they are now getting in a position where they can't afford the rent, and they are also turning to the council. That's fine. That's fair. That's what we're here for. We will do our level best to support it. What is not so easy, though, is the hopelessness that's being caused by another driver. And it's one that I have been hesitant to talk about. And actually, it might surprise you quite greatly that the largest cause of homelessness now in Hillingdon is the Home Office. Okay? The Home Office are driving more people to our door for support with homes than anybody else. And why is that happening? Well, Hillingdon has 1 in 5 of all of London's asylum seekers. Okay? And I'm not against this. We are able to support those because of the hotels, a good number of affordable hotels around Heathrow. They have the capacity to afford it. They are not causing direct problems within the community. So that is fine. What is difficult, what is challenging, is the fact that the Home Office says, we are going to speed up our administration. We are going to make decisions faster. And as a consequence of that, we are now having around 200 presentations every month from the hotels to the council saying, please help me because I have been evicted by the Home Office from the hotel after my asylum decision has been made. And it might surprise you, it certainly surprised me, that some of those turning around to help have said, I've been evicted because I have been refused asylum. And my assumption is that they would have been scooped up and shown the door, effectively. But that isn't the case. We don't see too many of those because they're quite pleased to disappear. But what we do have is this quite high number. As I say, if you were to say the planning assumption, about 200 a month, turning up and saying, please help us. 80% of those, we don't have to worry about because these are young men, which we don't have a duty to in terms of housing. But we have to go through the process of assessing. That takes officers, that takes officer time, and that costs money. 20%, sorry, yeah, 10%. So we're looking at about 20 households every month do require accommodation because they may be a family, they might have young children, they might have infirmities and something else. And we have then a duty to house these 20-odd households each and every month within the United Kingdom. We don't house them in the borough. We don't give them a council house. It doesn't happen. They move into the private rented sector, typically out of London, typically in the least affordable, in the most affordable areas for us. So they've journeyed some way away. But we, Hillingdon, bear the cost. We are in dispute with the government about this. We have put in a claim for £5 million, which is what we have spent so far, tackling these issues around immigration. And we are raising this matter with London councils. We represent all London councils. We are putting forward the case when it comes to local government settlement, which I talked about in June. We are pursuing with our members of parliament. And if necessary, we are looking at what we can do in law. in court. How can we challenge the government? Because at the moment, as I see it, Hillingdon is shouldering a national burden. We are shouldering a cost that should come out of the general public purse. And we are demanding that we are recompensed for this expenditure. At the moment, we don't have that. What we have is just the debt, just the hole in our budget that we are trying hard to fix. But please be assured that we are taking action on this. The fact that I'm speaking out now openly about it shows that we do now need to make this more public. We do need to have the government listen more clearly to our demands. But more importantly, I want this issue, the burden, and it is a burden in this regard, of having the port of Heathrow in our borough recognised for us to be properly funded, so that we don't have to keep going back to the government each time we have an influx of asylum seekers, or we have an influx of unaccompanied asylum seekers, or believe it or not, even those that may have a decade or more ago decided to go and live in Spain or Portugal in their retirement. Great, good luck, enjoyed it. Typically, they might suffer a little bit of ill health. Typically, they might not have family. They'll come back to Heathrow and they'll say, "Can the state please help me? I don't have a home." That is a Hillingdon problem. That's nobody else's, that's ours, because we are the Port Authority. The Chagos Islands, that wonderful deal that's been struck that you would have heard about. A number of the residents of the Chagos Islands said, "I don't know, I want to be Mauritian, but I've got a British passport." So they jumped on a plane, they've arrived at Heathrow, and they presented themselves to Hillingdon and said, "Please, I need the assistance of the state." And we have had a duty to support those that have families. And we believe it's going to cost this year, just to support those that have come from the Chagos Islands, £1.2 million. The government have very generously offered us £70,000 payment. So we are in this overall dispute now about the burden of Heathrow and how the movement of people, which is so much easier nowadays, can adversely impact Hillingdon Borough and as a consequence our budgets. So you can see that there's a number of quite complex issues. Give me 1 second. This wonderful screen has now frozen. No, not working. Okay, so as I say, we're moving towards the June settlement. I'm not particularly optimistic. We have to be preparing for the situation getting worse. And it's funny, you know, I wrote this afternoon, and at 4:30 this evening, I got an email from our head of our director of adult social care to say, just letting you know that the government had cut the funding to the Integrated Care Board as a consequence of this reorganisation, and the Integrated Care Board that funds jointly with us many, many services supporting our elderly and vulnerable residents. They're cutting that by 50%. And we have 6 months to find £1.5 million worth of savings. But that is a new pressure that's come. As I say, I learned about that at 4:30 this afternoon. So you can see when we're looking forwards, it is not a particularly bright future for the public sector for the coming period. And that is why we are wrestling so very hard to control further our expenditure, and why we are so critically reviewing now everything that we do in the council. And we are having to begin to make decisions that some time ago we wouldn't have made. We have changed the way we provide services. Let me give you some examples. We spend a lot of money on adult social care. And actually, some of the care providers make a very healthy profit. So we have decided that actually we will set up our own company, not the council. The council will own a company, and that company will provide care home services. We've just acquired the first home. We're going to be working with that, providing nursing care in this home, which is the most expensive. We expect that that will lead to a saving. Eventually, when it's worked its way through the system, it will take about a year to properly establish itself. But once it is fully established, it will result in a saving of at least £1 million a year. Just that one care home. And we have the ability and we have the demand to scale that up. And if we're successful, we'll have the ability to sell spare beds and make an even bigger profit. So that is a way where we're beginning to change. We're not just responding to the market, we're changing the way we deliver things. Can you give me a couple of other examples, if I may? Excuse me one second. We had a challenge around the vet theatre, and I know that caused an awful lot of public concern when the council seemed to be digging its heels and closing the vet. That wasn't the case. This was a case of where we are saying, let's look again at the way we provide things, and can we find better ways of doing it at less cost? And we felt the provider there was not giving us a particularly good deal. They wouldn't engage with us in a way that I felt was going to likely result in a reduction in the subsidy that we had to pay. And so we said, okay, we won't renew your contract. They thought they could blackmail us with public opinion and public pressure, but we held firm and we said no. And when they thought we would blink by saying, well, we're not going to operate, you will have to take it over. And we said, no, we're not taking it over, you close it. It's your theatre, you're the operator, you don't want to operate it, it closes. And at that point, there was a little bit of a reflection. And at that point, it enabled other people in the market to step forward. And we have an operator step forward. He's now operating the vet theatre, and I believe they will operate it to a better standard. Certainly, that was the advice we would give by the consultants, that they would be equally as good, if not better. And they are not costing us a subsidy every year. So we're saving some hundreds of thousands of pounds there. As a council, we used to run some early year centres, some nurseries. They're good things. For a council, we're not a nursery provider, and it's no surprise to you that the council doesn't run a nursery well. It costs us a lot more than anybody else. To start with, we start with the pension costs. Our staff are exorbitant, and it becomes impossible to compete. And so the only way we could run a nursery was if we subsidised it by a huge amount of money. And we said, well, that's not reasonable. We provide less than 2% of the nursery places in this borough. Let's move this out into the market. And we moved it into the market. It did take some resistance. We did get there. It was purchased. We do have now private companies running those nurseries, expanding the number of places. There's growth now. No cost to the council. We don't subsidise it anymore. Our golf courses. This has been a real fight for me for the last few years, because one of the pains I have is seeing the way I'm insisting on cuts or squeezes to services to ensure good value, and at the same time I'm subsidising people who go and play golf. So people that couldn't rock up, play around at golf, we're all dipping in our pockets and paying for. For me, it was not right, and I had to stop. We got to the stage where, after all the discussions, I said, close them. Don't care, close it. We are not subsidising them anymore because it was costing us, all of us, and my council taxpayer as well, over £400,000 a year to just subsidise golf. On the threat of closure, it became a national bit of a story in the newspaper, and lo and behold, new operators came forward and said, oh, we're interested. And we are very close. I expect tomorrow night to be able to agree a deal with a company that not only is going to run it at no subsidy, it's now going to pay us an income for the privilege of doing it. So just that transaction alone is a swing of £500 million. So we've got a number of these where we're looking at what we do and actually saying, is it in the best interest that the council does it? Or can the market do it better? Should the council be a lot smaller? Should we be a commissioner of the service rather than a doer of the service? And typically, I think that is right. There are occasions, though, when we will continue to run our services. As I say, we are under pressure and we are looking at what we're doing. And some of the nice things we have, I'm going to have to stop. We have been exceedingly proud, and I cannot remember a council meeting when we haven't really stood up and celebrated the number of green flags we have. The highest in the country, the highest in the universe, the highest in the planet is the normal phraseology that goes on. And we've been enormously proud about that. Well, but when I dig under the surface and I say to people, do you really know what a green flag is to make any difference to you? My own wife didn't even know what green flag was. Prince's Park, it's down there. I wasn't humble about that, didn't know. But there's a cost to that. We have to pay a company to do it. And part of the deal is some of our staff go and inspect parks elsewhere to determine whether or not they're green flag status. We're paying some of our staff to go around the country to inspect other people's parks to say these are of high standard. And I say, well, can we save that money and just put that money into making the parks even better, please? And that's what we will be doing. And you will have seen the way we are investing in children's play areas, because we are beginning to free up some money and being able to put that into even more improvements. So we will see some of the changes that are happening. Some of the stuff that we've been very proud to do, we can no longer really afford. I'd love to be able to afford to have more green flags. But actually, if we've got to make some savings, I'd rather save there than squeeze residents more for income. And so we're pushing a lot further on that one. I do understand, whilst with all of this uncertainty, that all these pressures on not only us, but on the police, on government, residents begin to lose faith. They begin to lose faith in government, they begin to lose faith in us, because they just see things going backwards. What I want to share with you is that the heading that we won't go backwards. We will be continuing to go forwards, but it's probably not going to be on as broad a scale as it would have been in the past. We will be more effective, though, in a far more narrow and focused area. I want to close by reminding you the strength of the council offer. Yes, we do have low council tax. I know we have a question about that, so I won't speak too much on it. But it's a benefit. You keep the money. I brought it in your pocket, my bank, council's bank. We have no fees and charges, and we will work hard to maintain both of those. What do I mean by that? Weekly waste. I think we're potentially the only council left in London that does weekly. Might be another one. But actually, it is an exceedingly valued service. That's what residents keep telling them. You have more libraries than just about any other borough. You have better leisure centres, and we're going to open West Drayton one very soon. That's going to be superb. I really do recommend you, when it is open, you get down there and have a look at what's going on there, because we learn from each of the others and we improve each time. We've got our family hubs, which are exciting, working well, and we have more than a typical borough. We are continuing to invest in our roads and highways. You might not believe that we're doing enough, and I understand that. And I can speak more and answer questions, but £12 million every year is going into maintaining our highways, fixing our potholes, sorting out what we're doing here, improving the road signage, painting the highways. We are investing. We are continuing to invest in the maintaining your streets. And most importantly for me, that the core services that the council provides to support those that need the support of the state are provided to an exceptionally high standard, in my view. For our children's services to be one of a very small handful in the country, graded as outstanding by Ofsted, is a tremendous achievement of our staff, and I thank them for that. Our adult social care has recently been judged to be amongst one of the best in the country. So that again shows you the extent of the support. And our adult learning has just been assessed as still being a very good standard. So our core services are provided to a high standard. Our charges to you, we maintain as low as possible. And those really important things that residents rely upon, waste, maintenance of our open spaces in your parks and your green spaces and your highways, those priorities that I believe are yours are definitely ours. If we have those wrong, you must let us know through your councillors how we should improve our targeting of those resources. But that is our understanding of your priorities. I just want to leave you with the final words, if I may, with one of the lead inspectors who's looking at our services, who I think said quite a lot of what I believe. So the local authority has shown a clear commitment to helping people live well and lead healthier and more independent lives. Well, I think for me, that is a great certification of the work of the council and our staff. We will continue to do that to the very highest standard. We will continue to argue on your behalf with regards to funding. And I hope that you will continue to support what we're trying to do. And at times, in the context of what I said, if we have to bring around change, ask why before saying we disagree. In the context of things, well, the world is changing. We can't afford to do what we've always done. We are going to have to change. And what we want to do is work with you to ensure we maintain your priorities to the very best standards. And if we have to make changes on those much lower priorities, like, for example, green flags, although that in itself is a marginal cost. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me. I've gone a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be. I'm more than happy to take the advised questions, as well as engage in any other questions or discussion now at all. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd just like to structure attendees' expectations. We have some, whilst the book is hired until 10 o'clock, that is when the council employees intend to be locking the doors on their way home. So the meeting will be winding up at 9:45. That means we have about 90 minutes with about 15 minutes for a break. We have some prepared questions for Ian. I would like to let the flow continue with supplementary questions where possible and where valid, but I do reserve the right to move on because after Ian has departed, we will have the open forum with our councillors. So with that, we're going to start with the first prepared question, which has a bit of a statement. Here we go. On the 5th of March 2025, a member of the public collapsed at Lycett Lido near the Water's Edge Park. No defibrillator could be found to revive him. The emergency services were called and we were informed that he later died in hospital. Although not guaranteed if a defibrillator had been available, the outcome may have been different. There is a defibrillator at the San Remo Cafe and at the Lycett Lido Railway Office, both on the other side to Water's Edge. Given that the Lido is open 24 hours a day, every day of the year, should there be at least 2 defibrillators on the water's edge side of the Lido. Slight supplementary, the Residents Association did make some inquiries a couple of years ago about the spread of defibrillators through the borough. And at the time, there were funds available to have these installed. So it's something we would very much like to sponsor and work with the council for. Ian.
It's very, very sad when these things happen. And yes, defibrillators are now being seen as part of the immediate first response and should be widely available. It has caused us to reflect on what we are doing, but it is a challenge. What is the amount of defibrillators that we would need to ensure there was adequate cover across all of our parks, open spaces and streets? How much would that cost? How would they be maintained? The council isn't funded to do this. The government does have funding, others have funding, and we welcome that funding, and we would encourage people to bid into the British Heart Foundation scheme when it opens again. It will open again this year. They will have a charity bidding process for community groups to bid for funding to install defibrillators in locations that they believe is important to the community. We will be working with, though, the pub, because it is a clear learning point here that is the sort of site I would have expected the defibrillator to be. It is an oversight that we haven't been properly looking at these issues. What I have found and what I know is that ward budgets, of which your councillors have a control of a small sum of money. I know from my own experience as a councillor in Eastcote that we have used our funds to purchase 3 defibrillators in places where the community wanted it, and that has been used. I know that West Ruislip have done the same. I know that Ruislip Manor have also supported it, as have some other wards. However, that does need to be additional to some of our signal key locations. And the Lido for me is one that we need to look afresh at. And a further issue for this one, a learning point for me is that our risk assessments of our open spaces may not be best practice. And I've asked the question of what are legal standards, what are the legal requirements here, because I want absolute clarity on what our duty is to make sure we discharge that properly. And we will ensure that where they are required, and my expectation is that Lido should have one, will have one. At the moment, we have risk assessments for activities within the Lido. So we are covering part of it, but it is a little bit piecemeal, and there should be a singular risk assessment for these open spaces, particularly where we know and we encourage residents to congregate in good numbers around obvious risks, and the Lido has obvious risks. So that is a piece of work that will be picked up very quickly.
Ready to move on? Thank you. Second, Professor 9 Eastcote Road, colloquially known as the old Citizens Advice Bureau site. In late 2015, the Council's Strategic Property Governance Group notified Hillingdon Citizens Advisory Board and initiated the departure of Ruislip Citizens. Sorry. Okay. The site was advertised in 2016, the COB left in 2018, and the building was knocked down in 2019. There were a couple of council announcements that progress was imminent In 2023, we received a response from Councillor Bianco, the deputy leader, and the cabinet member responsible for assets, I believe, at the time. Our intention is to submit a planning application in the near future, once detailed plans have been drawn up, for a row of 6 townhouses to be built on the land adjacent to the existing houses in St Martin's Approach. This will result in a rearrangement of the car parking, which will incorporate the land previously occupied by the CAB site. Once this planning application is made, it will of course be subject to the usual rules of engagement with the adjacent neighbours. Question: can you tell us why the process has taken over 9 years with no obvious endpoint? As it's been imminent for 5 years, and it's the near future. So when will we actually see a proposal for this site?
Okay, this one has become a little bit embarrassing for me. Why has it taken so long? One, let's be frank, there's nervousness about development of this site because it is such a treasured and important site. And the original proposals were not, in my view, ideal. And that has resulted in a reconfiguration and effectively a bit of a land swap. So we're going to build on part of the car park, and what used to be the old CAB site, we're going to keep more open, because I think that better is more sympathetic to the War Memorial and more sympathetic to the historic buildings nearby. So I will personally accept some responsibility for delaying it, because they had got to the stage of the designs, they were going to go to consult, and I said, sorry, we need to think again on that bit. I can see real concerns, so let's do that now. Bureaucracy, local authorities don't move fast. They really don't. That is one of my bugbears. As I share with you, it's taken nearly 4 years for me to close golf courses. And that's with me trying every which way to get these things done. These are difficult. Bureaucracies move slowly, and that is one of our challenges in modernising the council, is to get rid of that mindset and to make them sharper. Another real factor here is capacity. We are nervous about constantly buying consultants, which means going to the market and saying, can you please come in and do this piece of work for us? That's all the consultant would be. They're not actually coming to advise, they're coming to do the job, but we pay them as consultants. There's nervousness about doing that because it's misinterpreted. So we try and do as much as we can in-house. The pressure on us at homelessness, which I spoke around earlier, is such that I have insisted that all of our efforts have been focused on those sites that are going to deliver the greatest number of housing returns. So our capacity has been focused on the big sites that are delivering 90 and 100 properties. They've been focused in on our areas of regeneration, and we're bringing forward new estate regeneration programs that are going to deliver hundreds of new, better homes. And that is where the time and effort has been put. As a consequence, this one has left in the back. I'm told, and I have instructed, this is no longer to be left in the back. We are signing off the funding to bring in the design people to do it. And we have penciled in November planning committee for a decision. It's penciled. That's my target. Okay. Before then, you will see the design. There will be full and proper consultation. And that may or may not be held at date, depending upon the outcome of those consultations. Build period, then will then be told, I thought it's about 16 to 20 months. So we are expecting this to be finished in 2027. I'm sorry it's taken that long.
Are we happy with that as an answer? And I can proceed to the next question. Thank you very much.
Sorry, will the car park become smaller?
Marginally, yes. Yes, it does. But we have here the car park that is underused. Okay, so we are not cutting off the car parking to the estate. We want to better sign and better use this car park as well.
Does that mean, sorry, does that mean that the gate to the Winston Churchill car park will be left open as the gate to St Martin's car park is always open?
These are all the issues, because I stuck my finger in the spoke, changes around, please. These are all the issues that have now compounded the thinking, because no longer is it just build houses. It's okay, what do we do about all the car parking, the changes that's going on? This is all being worked out. It is all part of a wider programme of renewal of this estate. So it is a bigger programme, but the housing, it will be a key part, and that will be delivered. But there will be more than enough parking for daily use of the high street, because people tend to park there, but it's typically plenty of space on the day. It is busy at weekends and particularly busy at market time. But then we have to encourage people to come to this end. And I think that they will, once that's full.
Could you just get rid of that dreadful black hoarding? When it says idle.
We are required to put a hoarding up. We could spend some money making a bit prettier. We could do so.
Money must have been spent to put all the stuff that's there out.
Yeah, and some people may consider the graphics on it to be an eyesore. Others may consider it to be better than a black wall. We do our best to try and improve the street amenity and the visual appeal of it. We don't always satisfy everybody's tastes, and I respect that. But there needs to be a limit to how much money, scarce money, we spend on things like that, particularly when we know that it's going to be coming down, I hope, within a short period of time.
That was the fire station on that thing.
That's amazing how life changes, isn't it? It is so simple. I'm going to start me on police stations.
One on my left-hand side, white sleeve.
How many townhouses they're going to be?
I believe it's 6. I believe it's.
Is it quite a small space then?
Oh, it's 6 townhouses. I really would urge, before we begin to form a judgment in our minds, that we wait to see the plans and the visuals. And once you can see them and see the proposal, then you can quite properly arrive at a decision about what's going on here. We are under a responsibility and duty to provide more housing. And if we don't build them, we will have them built for us in places we don't necessarily want. So we do have to make sure that we do provide a growth in housing. Decisions haven't been made. My expectations it was not likely to be social housing. I can't prejudice that. My expectation is that it will be built for market. It's possible that the council does even build them. We sell this as a site with planning permission, and then a developer will take it, build it, and then probably use that as a private development. That would most likely be the direction, but that decision has not yet been made.
Well, a question on my left-hand side of the white sleeve, please.
Where it's a dangerous corner there, that will obviously be taken into consideration where the crossing is, which is all, it's dangerous anyway.
Absolutely. Entirely. We do have to look at the traffic configuration. We have to look at better parking control at that top end of that street. This all has to be part of it. It will come forward.
Thank you. Moving on to the third question. The background here is of enhanced parking enforcement, particularly around the Lido. We understand that some £49,000 was invested by the borough on a vehicle pound where improperly parked cars could be taken to. However, we believe the pound has never been operational due to design faults, and it cannot be used. Take it away.
Yeah. We got that one wrong. Why did we get that wrong? And this is a learning point for me. This was the unintended power of the leader when I just say, just get it done. I meant just get it done properly, just get it done in a way that it can work. And unfortunately, the pressure is felt that a solution is better than no solution when the leader says, get it done. And so there wasn't sufficient study done on the site. It was implemented and then found it would be operationally too inefficient to use. And therefore, it is an embarrassment to me that we have wasted money. And that I regret. We learn from our mistakes. But the more challenging issue is, if not there, where and how. And at that moment, this moment in time, I don't have an answer to that. And I'm not actually sure that we will ever have an answer to that, because the cost of not only building that £49,000 is, in fact, relatively small beer. It will be swallowed up quite easily in the operating costs in terms of security, people on site, and then difficulties of disposing of cars that aren't claimed, and all the other complications. When we look at this for the number of vehicles that are likely to be removed to it and the use it's made, it's not clear that it would ever be economically viable. It would be one of those things that would costing us a lot of money to remove people's vehicles from the street. And until we find a solution that doesn't have such a perceived dramatic impact on cost, we may not be able to remove in the way that we want. We may just be only repositioning costs again.
Something we could negotiate with them?
You could, but then we would at best remove 3 vehicles a day. We are, because we don't have a local pound. The local pound would have got us up. But when we would only remove 3 vehicles a day and we work out the cost of the hire of the truck and the people, the actual fine doesn't cover it. So it would cost us money to remove those cars. And I know that isn't an answer to the residents that suffer the problem, but actually we can reposition the cars, we could remove the problem, stick them somewhere else. Although we don't get a fine, we actually aren't costing us as much to take away the problem, the residents.
We're not just franchising out to a private company and come along, lift them up, take them away in their own compound, and then charge them 100 or 200 quid.
The people we would use would be Alcoa. They are the people that are contracted to do it. They do operate, but they don't have a local pound. That's why we ended up trying to build our own and solve our own problem, because we're trying to be helpful, trying to solve these things. And that was the issue. If Alcoa had a local pound, we wouldn't have been trying to build our own, I can assure you. We don't need to do that. The difficulty is, in this part of London, in fact, not only in this part of London, across a lot of London, car pounds are rare. The number of vehicles removed nowadays is nowhere like it used to be, because it actually costs authorities money to remove, staff and store cars. The fines we are able to recoup.
What about using some of the golf courses? Put them on there.
Well, I mean, that is its own space. It is very valid, but it doesn't diminish the operating costs. The land cost is not the issue. The building cost, as I said, the £49,000. Yes, I know that that's a sunk cost of gone, but we will probably be spending more than that each year just in operating it. You imagine you've got to have staff there for more than 8 hours of the day. You imagine start working out how much that's costing you, plus all the overheads, then the security, then getting rid of the cars that aren't collected. Sorry? That is contracting out. That is contracting out. There is no car pound operator local. Now, Alcoa is very happy to operate for us and remove it. The issue they have is when we take them to police. And that was where we started trying to solve that problem. And we can get that solution right. And what we can't do is find an easy solution. Because us alone is not valid, it's not viable. If we we start working in partnership, it does become more viable, but then we can't remove so many in a day, it becomes less effective. If we only removed a couple of cars a day, it wouldn't wash its face. We would have to be. Yeah.
And it averages 1.5, 1.5 cars a day.
Yeah.
That's all it's doing at the moment.
Yeah. Well, that just shows you the issue. The running cost of 1.5 cars a day is not valid. That is the problem. If it was 10 cars a day, it would be more economically viable.
Only 1.5 cars. You said that there would be more cars if there was a pound.
Absolutely. If there was a local pound on the busy, please let me answer the question. On a busy weekend in the summer, there will be more cars removed. For 300 days of the year, there will probably not be. And actually, I have the running cost for 365 days of the year per car pound, not 60 days or 40 days or whatever it would be in the peak season. And that is the difficulty. And we don't have the money to be able to subsidise people who park and have their cars removed. And you wouldn't want to have to start funding that service. It is far better for us to reposition. We can reposition them quite quickly, more easily, and at less cost. And that is what we used to do before we started on this pound, and that is what we may have to revert to. But we've not given up. I've not given up on the idea of having a car pound, but I don't know how we're going to make it operational other than sharing with Harrow. That we are talking with Harrow about what their demands are for Pinner Centre. Can we work together in a way that would make it economically viable? For us to bear alone the costs of operating a car pound would mean that it will be sunk money and we will be closing it very soon after we opened it, because we couldn't afford to carry on paying that money. It's part of it's just car park. I don't know whether it's used, and I think because it became the car pound, it became the car pound because it wasn't used, there wasn't the demand for parking space. So I think it's just vacant land that may be developed or used as a car park. I can't answer specifically, but my expectation is that we haven't removed used car parking space to build that pound. My understanding is that that was the end of a car park that was never full. It was adjacent to East Coast Station. So it was quite local for the Lido. It sorted it quite well. We had looked at the car park at the back of East Coast by the medical centre, but actually that's a well-used car park. And the view is if we took out car parking spaces for a few number of days of the year, we would adversely impact on your ability to shop in East Coast. We would hit the businesses in East Coast High Street. We said, no, we can't do that. So we had to try and find somewhere that wasn't being used, wouldn't have negative impact, was available, wasn't give us the money. That's what the officers did. They thought they'd cracked it for me. I pushed them too hard. They got it wrong. And now we're looking at it. We're not sure that we can get it right, even operationally, because of the costs. Right.
Doing the deal with the Lettings Club next to the Lido, because that car park potentially a lot of time. I'm sure they'd be appreciative of the money.
They would, but the government has certain standards they require when it comes to running a car pound.
People dump their cars, don't.
I'm sorry, but we have to abide by the law. And if we wish to institute a car pound, we will have to build it to a certain standard with certain security advice, certain staffing levels and everything else. That's what we have to do. We have to comply with the law. We're a law-abiding council. So whilst we could reposition cars to somewhere like that, we can't use it as a car pound. So we could take it and take the problem away and place it somewhere else. And with their agreement, that would be fine. But what we couldn't do is put in a car pound and then penalise and charge people for having removed it. We would be a free service at relocating their car.
Into a wide car park. So you can park in the car park with 30 cars there and you get the bus with two runs there.
In theory, I understand where you're coming from. I don't think TfL would run the bus service. The council wouldn't wish to start running a bus service, park and ride from Eastcote Station to the Lido. We will be in a position where that wouldn't be financially viable. It would be too small a parking area to even justify the operation of a bus service. But I do hear where you're coming from. A park and ride, those sorts of schemes would help alleviate pressure in the area. I do understand that.
I'm going to move on now, if you wouldn't mind, because we're over halfway through our time and we're not halfway through the questions. Question 4 concerns the orchard site. Yeah, you knew it was coming. Now, the Vice Residents Association was for once ahead of the game here, mainly because when we were attempting to book our 2023 Xmas dinner, we attempted to book at the Orchard. We thought, oh yeah, we'd love to have you, but you've got to book before the 7th of December because we're closing. So from essentially early November, we were lobbying our esteemed councillors to attempt to find out whether the Orchard could gain a local listing. The background, of course, being the Orchard was built on the site of an early pleasure ground when the Oxbotham Railway came through the area in 1904. And of course, most famously, it was the unofficial mess of the 303 Squadron of the RAF, the Polish Free Air Force. Hence, the replica plane in the dedicated garden between the road and the Orchard, and hence the Orchard featuring in the council's publication, the Polish Heritage Trail. Now, we understand that proposals have or will be going to the council's planning committee for local listing. However, local listing does not confer anything like a national listing. Over to you, Ian.
It is a landmark of Ruislip. It's part of the faith of. And the thought of it being pulled down and lost is just out with my thinking. You will get some very pleasant news tomorrow night after Cabinet, when I am expecting this to be listed.
Ian, I wonder if you could arrange for the RA to get a message as and when, because we'd like to get something up on our website as soon as possible.
You may follow Cabinet online. It is live, it's YouTube, you can watch it. It doesn't last very long. And we run through the decisions pretty quickly, and you will hear that discussion and you will hear the decision.
Sorry, does that mean that Lidl's won't be building on it? It's like this.
As I said, a local listing confers none of the protection of a national listing. We'll proceed quicker if information is assimilated. Thank you.
Colleagues, let me assure you that we are not officials. I'm a councillor, but first and foremost, I'm a Ruislip resident. That's where I live. That's where I'm going to retire to. It's where my family are growing up in this area. I'm invested in it. It is a part of me. And that includes what I used to remember as a very good pub. And that I miss. And I would like to see a better use being made of it. And as a council, it will be a high bar for somebody to come along and desecrate that building. It all stands together. It absolutely all stands together.
I was the last person out of the Orchard.
Was it a lock-in?
Quite an eventful evening.
Good.
Sunday, and I've spoken to Mr. Forward. I've got all the photos and I want them all archived for Helen and Barry use. And I took every photograph of the 3 of 3 and the memorabilia. The one point I want to make up is what happened to that memorabilia that was in there? Was it still, where did it go? Do we know?
I'm
If
sorry.
the gentleman would care to peruse the Licensed Residents Association, he will find edited highlights of the meeting we had with Lidl and their merry band of consultants. You will find all of those details there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Say, my last night.
Moving on, question 5 concerns the services provided by the Citizens Advice Bureau.
All right, yeah.
We understand that the Hillingdon Citizens Advice Bureau has failed in its bid to obtain funding support through a tender process. What plans does our council have to continue to support the full range of services needed by residents, sometimes just temporarily experiencing disadvantage?
Good question. And I didn't have the answer, so I've had officers prepare the answer for me, so they could brief me what's happening. This was a tender process. As I tell you, we look at the way we deliver services. It costs us money to provide an information advice service. It's not free, we have to fund them. And we believed we should test the market to ensure we're getting best value. And we found an operating partner that will provide an equivalent service at a lower cost to us. That service is the Hillingdon Advice Partnership. It combines the previously contracted services from Age UK Hillingdon, Belt Farm Christian Centre, Disability Advice, and Support Hillingdon Dash, and Nucleus. I don't know who Nucleus is, but they together form the Hillingdon Advice Partnership. They were successful in the tender. The Citizens Advice Bureau was not. There are arrangements for the transfer of staff between Citizens Advice and this new partnership, and we will see a continuation of services, but under a new provider.
We're just going to take a word from Councillor Cawthorne, who previously was a cabinet member with responsibility for some of the range of services, I believe.
It doesn't relate to my previous responsibility, Graham, but at your executive meeting last week, you raised this very question. I undertook to look into it. I have a response today, quite a detailed one. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. When you're talking to my own colleagues, once I've done that, I will share that with you, and you may wish to focus on it. So there's some additional information I will share.
Thank you very much, sir. Just as background information, the Licensed Residents Association meets on the first Wednesday of each month, and we typically have at least 3 of the 5 potential councillors from Leicester separately by St Allen Ward attending. They do diligently take away the questions that we pose to them, and they do return with answers to our questions. Any questions from the floor about CAB services, or can we move on? Thank you.
Will they have a different name, or will that still carry on? Because people.
Well, I've just written down Hillingdon Advice Partnership, so the answer is yes. Thank you. Question 6, quite snappy. Have you been able to have a positive response from the Metropolitan Police Service regarding their lack of visibility on our streets?
That's both yes and a no. Okay. We have London councils, the leaders of all 32 London boroughs come together as a body called London Councils, and we meet with the Commissioner quarterly, and we have some quite free and frank discussions with the Commissioner about Metropolitan Police. We met with him the week before last, and he assured us of 2 things. Firstly, neighbourhood policing is protected under the cuts. And you would have heard about the cuts that are going to happen in the police numbers. And as I say, neighbourhood policing is not going to be impacted by that. Neither will the response policing. So when you phone for a police response and they come under their blues and twos to you, that won't be cut either. In fact, when you dig a little bit beneath the surface, the cuts to police numbers isn't going to be making police officers redundant. It is those posts that they've been unable to recruit to will no longer be trying to recruit to. So it's not a case of we're going to see a fall in the number of police officers. we will see a fall in the number of police posts available, is my understanding. We've been further assured that you may have heard about the ending of the schools-based police officer. Secondary schools, each state secondary school has had a police officer assigned to that school and was based within the school and operated during the school hours. The Met Police have found that that is not an ideal solution, and what they have done is combine that schools-based officer with the neighbourhood policing team. I smelt what I thought was a rat. I thought, well, they'll move them across, delete the post. I have it in writing from our borough commander that that is not the case, that the schools-based police officers will remain as an additional person post within those wards where there is a school, but instead of being based with the school, they're being based with the community team. So the community team that has a secondary school will be slightly bigger than a community team without a secondary school. The Commissioner has spoken very strongly about the importance of visible policing. I believe he is absolutely committed to it. Furthermore, he is absolutely committed to tackling violence against women and girls. That is a high priority, along with violent crime, where we see the rise in robberies and snatches and telephones you've seen. He's absolutely committed to that. An area where there is likely to be some concern is he has made a comment about reviewing further the availability of police front counters, 24/7 police officers. He does not believe that it is a sustainable model at the moment, and he's looking to review it. We are continuing to argue for the retention of Uxbridge Police Station as a police base. Okay, I have nothing that says that that is likely to change.
That's a good question. Is that not a warning then, the fact that we've got police officers at secondary schools? Because at the moment, you're saying about the parks, which is great for a young one like me with my young child, but what about the teenagers? Because I used to attend Rice Youth Club, which is now closed. So we don't want them hanging out on the street. If you can't afford for them to be in sport, what is there for that sort of age? Because if there's a police officer in the school, there's obviously a lack of what's going on. What else is there out there for them?
I don't know that the police officer was there to provide services for children in that way. There is a multitude of opportunity for young people. What we're not good at is making people know what is available and how to get involved. That is part of the challenge. And another part of the challenge is when we speak to young people, they prefer to have unstructured services that are delivered by well-meaning older people for them. They prefer independence, they prefer exploring themselves and developing away from the scrutiny of older people. That is what we found when we came to looking at our youth services. They said, fine, but we don't want a club to go to. That's old school thinking. And in fact, some of those are quite intimidating to a lot of young people and won't go there. What they want is us to provide more structured services and facilities in places like our parks and open spaces, our football pitches, our courts, our leisure centres, climbing walls in our leisure centres, all of those sorts of things. So we're beginning to change the way we deliver it. And we are moving away from a youth club type centre. We will be building more opportunities and getting more facilities available for young people to use our leisure centres, which shouldn't just be seen as swimming pools and gyms. They're getting far more involved than that. And the new facility down in West Drayton is going to be a cracker. It's going to have a rooftop football pitch, for example. It's going to have climbing walls.
Is that a charge? Like, how do they then pay for that? So is the parents that pay for it?
There will be a charge.
Right, okay, so it comes from us.
There will be a charge, of course. Very, very few things are either free nowadays.
So what are you going to do with the youth centre in Berkeley Street?
I don't know. What we do know is at the moment that it is not, we have not identified a use from the council's perspective. in terms of development, it's not easy because of the floodplain issue. So its actual use is unclear. But at the moment, it is not providing any real benefit and is actually just providing a cost to us. The youth centre in Berry Street.
Right, moving on.
That doesn't get out of the operational cost though.
6 minutes, 3 questions.
Right, a big question.
In September 2023, you promised a schedule for repairing / replacing broken / uneven pavements. This has not been actioned.
Being actioned is the publication on our website of the inspection programme and the findings of that inspection programme. So as a resident, you can look and say, I believe my street's bad, it needs to be done. And you can then look and see benchmark against all the others because it'd be graded. And that will give you a more realistic assessment of the likelihood of it being immediately resurfaced. Repairs will be conducted immediately. That's always been the case. We will see in the cabinet paper tomorrow that's coming through that releases the money, the £12 million for the coming year, which is for the resurfacing and rebuilding of some of our roads as well as the repair. Not only will that have the published programme for the year, there is also the undertaking, the commitment in that report to publish the assessment report online, which is what I've wanted for some time. I believe we should be transparent. And the more you understand about the issues, overall issues, the more you will begin to accept the decisions that are being made, in my view. Most people are exceedingly reasonable. But when your road's bad, that's all you see. When you look at it and say, actually, engineers have inspected every street, every pavement in this borough at a period of time of the year, and this is where I sit, will make you understand that although you're bad, there may be people a lot worse. That's where the money will go. And we will make sure that we fix any hazards or trip hazards or repairs rather than resurface. I hope we will get more transparent about where you're likely to be received that service. And also you will understand the enormity of the task. £12 million is a lot of money. It astounded me, and it still does. I have to keep looking at this number. 435 miles of road work, just roads in Hillingdon that we have to maintain. 755 miles of pavement. £12 million. It's a little bit of a scratch at the surface. Without what used to be coming through, money from Transport for London, the Mayor of London used to give us very generous grants, rightly so, to maintain the highways. Without that being reinstated, we are going to slip behind, and without the government reinstating its previous level of funding on highways, we will slip further behind. We are doing as much as we can, and we want to do more, and we're aiming to do more. What you will get is that transparency of data.
Thank you, Ian. Question 9 or 10. Can you give examples of where the council has made the most of external grants, be that central government, charities, philanthropic bodies, that have been made available to the council?
Okay, loads of grants. Let me just run off very quickly. Housing, April 24 to date, £80 million worth of grants. The council, 50% of which has been received, 50% has been agreed, but the buildings haven't yet been commenced or finished and the grant not been paid. Reducing emissions, so this is our carbon improvement of our civic centre and the rest of our estate, together with new boilers in social housing, £15.25 million grant funding. We're working with West London Alliance, Economic Prosperity, 433,000, people and skills, 600,000, supply readiness, joint with Ealing and Arrow, 151,000, Mayor London at the High Streets programme, 160,000, Mayor London Good Growth Fund, 450,000, the Environment Agency multiple small pots of money to deliver. I can assure you, when we're under pressure, we look very closely at grant funding opportunities. We pursue them to the very best of our ability, and we have been quite successful in the money we have secured. My understanding is that we have the highest grant for our reducing emissions, and we have one of the biggest projects in London in the way the council's gone about reducing the emissions in the civic centre.
Thank you. We're pretty much on time. Final question.
By the way,
Tell us what grant was applied with regards to the National Lincoln Bill.
The national,
You've got a 755 National Lincoln Reserve in Royston.
I have no idea, sorry sir. I can find out, I must get one of the ward councillors to.
My question is, have your green spaces team applied for any grants to help manage those woods? So that would be cutting funding and cutting staff.
My answer is I don't know, sir, and as I said, I will get one of your ward councillors to find the answer and provide it to you.
Final question at 10. This is based upon the council's previous policy of not increasing council tax for 10 years. Would you be somewhere different with your funding had we not had 10 years of zero council tax increase?
Okay. Quick answer to that, yes, we would be somewhere different. The other flip side of that, so would you. You would be a few £1,000s down, so we would have had that money, it would be in our bank. It is undoubtedly the case that having a low tax base under the present regulation and rules of government is unhelpful. But the problem is not having a low tax base. A low tax base is good news. Don't ever celebrate the fact that actually you want high taxes. Actually, very few people turn around and say, I want to pay even more tax, let me give you more money and please raise it even higher. That's not what we're in the business of doing. We're in the business of taking from you the very minimum we need to take to enable us to provide the services that we believe you need and want. And that's what we strive to do. And the decisions made in the past were absolutely appropriate. They were about taking what was needed at the time and no more. Other authorities have taken a lot more and they've stuffed it in their bank. So they've taken money from you out of your wallets, put it in their bank. That's great. That's made those local authorities comfortable. They are under the same driver for us, for efficiency. They don't react as nimbly as we do, but it doesn't stop them going bust. Okay? The authorities that have had to have extra financial assistance, extraordinary financial assistance, are all higher council taxpayers than us. The challenge isn't that you've got low council tax. The problem is the restrictions the government puts on us. Instead of saying to every local authority, we know the average council tax is £2,000. We'll allow you to raise council tax by £100 this year. They say you can raise it by up to 5%. It rewards those with a big tax base. Arrow's 5% is a lot more than our 5%. And the difficulty is how the gaps get bigger and bigger and bigger. If we had been allowed to raise council tax over just the last 5 years, not the period when it's frozen, over the last 5 years when we've been increasing it in step with every other London borough, because we've all typically gone for the referendum maximum, 4.99% this year. If we had done that over the last 5 years, by the average amount of money, not the percentage, so the amount the average has gone up by, we would have an extra £7 million worth of income. So the difficulty isn't that we have the low too low a tax base, it's when we need to raise tax, the government caps us at 4.99%, rather than saying, actually, Ellington, you're 50, why is Harrow 80? Why are we going further and further backwards? It's because of rules and restrictions to put on us. They don't trust local authorities to make sensible judgments. They don't trust us to determine what is the appropriate level to raise. And they don't do that because in the past, local authorities have abused that trust. We're committed not to do that. We are committed to keep it as low as possible. But at times, I don't need to raise it by 4.99%. I might need to raise it by 50%, £50, which might, for us, be 5.5%, might be 6%. You might complain, but it's 50 quid, which will be less than Harrows, and will be less than Ealing's, and less than somewhere else. So if we look at the cost rather than a percentage, we will always be better, and I could raise more. So the problem is not our tax base. Please don't fall for the idea that we should have been charging you a lot more tax for a lot more years. That is mistaken. What we need is freedom and trust to be able to act in your interest.
We're running a few minutes late, so we'll start part 2 at 9:20. I'd like to thank Ian for once again addressing us. We were all Democrats here, and there's no better democratic position than questions at an open forum. Thank you once again, Ian.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you speaking with you tonight. Thank you.
See you back at 9:20.
While you were talking, then that job was I literally, you were saying it was like, literally, as you were saying it, it was mental. He paused everything that time. Hello. I'm expecting the mayor like it.
Because the council activists indicate behind the design to the school district. And I believe the wording in the old legislation.
When you guys in the research on private road, on the internet, you know, you can see the difference.
That means it. You know, I thought that we want.
We have two open meetings, we think the committee, Thank
Watching.
He is watching.
Something to me, you know.
I wonder if I could possibly request him to return to their seats. And here we go with part two. You're all a long way from school days, aren't you? When I speak, I'll be listening quiet. Remember? It's pretty simple. There will now be a somber moment as it's only relatively recently we've learnt of the unfortunate death of a previous long-serving member of the Islip Residents Association, Mike Hodge. Somebody who knew him much longer than I ever did. Brian Cowley, our honorary president, will now say a few words.
Yes. Can you all hear me? Right, good. As Graham said, we only learned earlier this week that Mike passed away after a long illness in last January. He joined the committee in May 1999 and within a year was sharing responsibilities for planning with John Williams, who was also a life vice president of the association. They went on doing this together until 2018, so that's 18 years. In 2010, Mike was appointed vice chairman of the committee of the association, and in 2022, his service to us was recognised by appointment as a life vice president. I did speak to his son earlier this afternoon and had a very pleasant conversation. We weren't aware, if we'd been aware of his death, we would have obviously attended his funeral. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Well, I know what my voice sounds like. You've got the town crier. You know, we've organised online events about the development of the farm and the potential little development of the orchard. There will be a new hospital thanks to funding agreed by West Streeting, the Secretary of State for Health, who was lobbied vigorously by the new MP for Archbishop South Lighting, whose name escapes me at the moment. Thank you, I need a backup. So that's going to be the extent of the chair's report. The minutes in your information bundle. Now, as pointed out by one of our more attentive members, who spotted the mistake in the minutes? If anybody would misread the 28th of April 2023 as 10th of April 2024, I'm hoping everybody will be happy to pass the minutes as they are presented to you. Anybody say nay? Thank you very much indeed. Treasurer's report and annual accounts. No doubt you've scrutinised these to the merest penny. There's not a lot to say about them. With the best will in the world, we wouldn't have got far had we embezzled the entire 6,000 turnover. Nick.
There are questions to take them. What I can't well to say, which is me there, is thank you to Chinton to provide the support for the association to collect collecting the cash. And you may also note that the council has slightly brought this year as Ashburn no longer able to bring out the accounts for us due to the change of ownership. I'd just like to put on record of things to them from their own over the years. Any other questions? Thank you.
Yeah, we all benefit from quitting while we're ahead. Election of chair and committees. I can't see much about this in the paper pack in front of you. As you can probably understand, we have not been deluged with people wishing to fill the vacancies on the committee. However, all those filling positions are willing to be re-elected. I meant to ask for a proposer and seconder of chair and vice chair. I can see a hand from Alan Wentman and Daniel O'Neill. Slight sidebar, if you don't say yes, I don't know who takes over the controls of the microphone. Anybody, all those in favour of the chair and vice chair being re-elected for the next year? Can I take that as unanimous? Thank you very much indeed. I think the battery's just gone, has it? Oh well. Project. John Swindells, always a man with a backup. Proposer for all the other committee positions. Daniel O'Neill, seconder for all the other committee positions, Sue Midgley. All those in favour of the committee for next year? Thank you. Again, is that unanimous? Thank you very much indeed. Item 7. We needed to update our association's rules. In days gone by, it made eminent sense for it to support local businesses. Hence, we were mandated to have an account with a banking institution with a branch in our local high street. Since then, the days. Those of a constitutional bias have had a good hour to read through the association's rules as proposed. Does anybody have any objection to what I'm reliably informed is some sensible tidying up? Any objections? Thank you very much indeed. Item 8. Open forum. Have at it. Well, I'm happy. Far away.
Please be upstanding.
Does the local authority have a contingency plan if, will actually Pavilion moves to the area, and what is that contingency plan?
Birmingham County Council, City Council currently has a problem in that it's attempting to restructure the status of some of its more manual workers.
Back on. Birmingham City Council currently has a problem with attempting to restructure the status of some of its more manual workers, hence they are on strike and bins are not being collected. Having been to a community resilience event at the Civic Centre, the most efficient council officer I've yet met working for this council is the resilience officer. I would suggest he does. What it would be, I have no idea. Philip.
I can't give you much of an answer other than to say that as part of the council's operational practices, all of these eventualities are risk assessed, and there is a plan of sorts to bring to bear in those sorts of situations. I can't give you any detail, I'm afraid. If you're interested in knowing more about the process itself, which we oversee at the audit committee, I can send it to you. Bit of a dull, short answer, I'm afraid, but I can't give you any more than that. I'm afraid.
Are you being men or council?
Okay, I'll be guided by my colleague, I think, principally agency, we think. Peter, if you're absolutely sure, Willie, that if you're not, I'll just check. I'll just check. I think it's a hybrid. I've got some are on our books, and I suppose you typically have a core workforce, and you have the peripherals that you bring in as and when you require them. I actually think it's a bit of a mix, but I'll defer to my colleague, and I'll have to do some more digging on that, if that's not. Thank you.
Next question. Well, a satisfied audience.
So I'm being a bit naughty here and speaking for Ruislip Manor when I'm a Ruislip council, but they are currently looking at building a housing development there. Currently living there is Ealing's overflow for housing. So anybody who is spreading rumours saying people who have got off boats and it's all asylum seekers is not the truth. It is Ealing's emergency housing currently. But there is currently private independent companies looking at splitting on planning application. We have negotiated. We didn't in our ward, so we isn't in our. Do you want to do this, Philip, or am I not doing it right?
No, there's nothing more we said. I just want to add to it, Peter. That's all. No,
and then I'll hand over to you. Yeah.
Has more plans gone into what we were seeing here last time?
Not currently. Not currently. They are. Okay. You want to
So there have been some discussions with the council, and as we understand it, they are looking at some revisions to what's currently in the public domain as far as I know. Again, as Peter said, we're Ruislip council rather than that. I know that's an artificial distinction for you, but that's what we understand. They've looked again, and there are some revisions.
Still alive.
Yeah.
It went in October last year.
Yeah.
And it's still under consideration by the council. No decision has been made.
That's
So
right.
I gather, although it's a planning committee.
There is still some discussion that sort of around the plans themselves. So, yeah.
And I would refer to the question to the Ruislip Residents Association website, where you have again excerpted highlights of the extensive Zoom meeting we had with the would-be developers of the barn. All your questions will be answered there. The number of properties, the reduction to practically zero of the number of existing properties that are overlooked by the proposed developments, even down to the volume of flood mitigation, which they necessarily to include. We would also point out is that the cover of the current town crier features the prospect of Ruislip Station becoming step 3, because when a developer develops a site, they are forced to pay something the community infrastructure levy. The value coming from the barn developed as currently would be some £735,000, which would be a fair amount of seed money to persuade TfL to abandon its current plans to put in step 3 access at Eastcote and better develop the transport hub, 2 train lines and 8 bus services at Ruislip Station. Next question. It's not the second most important transport hub in the borough. There are nowhere near as many bus services at Ruislip Manor as Ruislip.
The only way to leave step 3 is to stay on the train to Uxbridge, you're coming from.
I agree.
Then back to Ruislip and get off the train there.
You appear to confuse me for an employee of Transport for London.
No, I'm just saying, you know, you're talking about step 3 of Ruislip.
There isn't a development of Ruislip Manor to provide seed funding from a community infrastructure levy donation. Anything else? 6 minutes. There must be something on somebody's mind.
Graham Bartram's watching on Zoom and he says that we need to vote positively on the change of the committee and the accounts. So having just said there's no objections is enough.
Please forgive my inexperience of chairing this meeting. I now need you to vote positively on the chair and vice chair going into the next year. Please raise your hands. Thank you. Third unanimous vote tonight. And we now need to vote positively on the other members holding individual portfolios on the committee.
The accounts and the rules.
Raise your hands, please. Simon says, we're now voting positively on the accounts. Everybody's happy with the accounts, aren't they? Unanimous. Thank you very much again. And one last final chance to vote unanimously on the changes to the rules. Hands in the air. Thank you very much indeed. Is Graham Bartram happy with that? Always the apprentice.
So I didn't manage to log into the discussion with the other people the other week online. But I mean, I know there's things about the barn being locally listed or whatever. But what's going to happen with that, with the roundabout thing?
I would refer the gentleman to my previous answer. Log on to the RI website and you will find video excerpts of all the questions put to Lidl at that Zoom meeting for whatever reason you are unable to log into. Steve, please stand up.
I'm still very concerned about the flood mitigation situation. I put a question to the council which was robustly treated with human disregard for the reality of the matter. And I'm still in somewhat a state of disbelief that it was treated with such, I'll call it ignorance, for want of a better word. I think we really need to know what's going on and what protections are in place for residents, because at this stage, especially with the further mitigation that yet again is being put in place at Breakspear Road South by HS2 as an example, we need to know why this is going on. Frankly, especially with Breakspear Road South, we still face the same problem of individuals trying to use New Year's Green Lane as access into the area, and what can only be called punch-ups and arguments between individuals who meet each other coming along the road, and then nobody can get anywhere, because frankly, it causes further issues coming into the area. And I don't believe HS2 will say, oh, this will be the last time we close it, last time we close it. And frankly, I think we'll see much more of it, and they have to be brought to task. And frankly, if we need extra money in the area, they're making millions. They're making millions. And in the meantime, what are they putting back into the neighbourhood that they're going to chuck away once they've done what they need to do?
Well, I think Steve, you've hit one of my pressure points there. I could have probably spoken without notes from 7:45 until now about the lack of flood mitigation in this borough. Perhaps we should have an online meeting about it. I think there was a separate question about our council's inability to control HS2. The current closure of Breakspear South, having had it clarified, is for the simple addition of a slightly larger culvert underneath the road itself. Quite why that would take 3 weeks to achieve, I don't know. I presume HS2's contractors are using teaspoons for excavation. I believe that there have been several applications for the HS2 Community and Environment Fund that have benefited various voluntary groups within the area, and it would probably be useful if the council could compile a list of those, and the OA would be more than willing to publicise them. We probably need to split it roughly between those above the A40 and those beneath. But I think we could do that to go some way of showing that there has been some money flowing towards our community, leaving a maybe only minor in its locality, but a lasting legacy from HS2's interruption of our life, which will probably find the extent of about 15 years of active work and probably 10 years of dismay leading up to the start of construction.
Can I just say something? Because Philip and John and myself as Russell County have actually been working quite hard on this. So second night for us at Scout Hut, they're over there. Some fun with the planning, but as of tonight, is it tonight? Tonight, hopefully, they are finally passing the final bit of the application to the second night Ruislip, helped by HS2 money, can get their new home. Well done to them. Eastcote Hockey Club, which strangely is in Ruislip, which always slightly confused me. The new car parking there was a joint venture between some council money and HS2 money to put a brand new car park in there, because we've got Ruislip Rangers Football Club, Ruislip Cricket Club, so that's been done. St Martin's Church has benefited from new toilets, facilities, which church. Oh, thank you, Mervyn. So actually, the three of us working with people like the church, the hockey club and the Scouts have actually been able to, despite all of the frustration from HS2 and the difficulty for our community, have actually been able to get some money in. Now, this money is for community groups to do projects. They're different in their type. But if people do have ideas about community groups and projects that would be interested in this, please get in touch with myself or Philip or Councillor John Riley, and we'd be happy to do it. Is that a question for me?
We've got about 20 seconds.
Personally, I'm very in favour of it going, although there is some people who are saying we are going to do our absolute best to make sure that there is that facility put there. Although, as ever with everything, there is a division in opinion on whether we should or shouldn't do it. More than happy to talk to you afterwards in a bit more detail. That's a bloody good idea, actually. I'm going to take that away and try and extract some money from them. Over to you, Fred. Thank you.
Well, clearly we played to a draw without extra time. I believe there is some £20 million of HS2 money ready and allocated for POAC 2. The problem being that our esteemed council's previous planning application did not have the required biodiversity net gain of 10%. Now, one could argue whether biodiversity net gain is actually valid, but it's national legislation, so we have to play by it. And it's quite hard to uplift your biodiversity by 10% when you're starting at a site of special scientific interest, which is the case with the lake that the council is proposing to relocate HOAC to. So, contact us for more details later. Now, I understand that it's not in our area, and because I have an environmental bias, I've tried to keep abreast of this, but I understand that the council was meant to be submitting revised planning applications for the new HOAC by the end of last month. It's just one of those things I haven't had a chance to check on.
We'll take it away. We don't have the detail.
Can I just say, somebody brought it up earlier about you not having anything to do, there's nothing for them to do. But surely something like that is very important. And I don't understand why you can still have wildlife and whatever. It doesn't have to be a separate thing because children can appreciate that as well. Surely. Indeed.
And the council is very good at enforcing private developers to ensure that these developments do have this 10% biodiversity net gain. Why they thought they themselves were exempted from it is beyond my understanding. Yes, Steve, fire away, one last question, please.
If there's this 20 million available, then maybe it's worthwhile creating a Hillingdon defibrillator charity for us to get some of that money to put the defibrillators in.
Specific.
I wasn't seeking to mislead anybody. The 20 million is allocated for a new HOAC.
Oh, sorry, these not that's 20 million, the funds that Peter's got.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. Sorry, not the 20 million.
I mean, the HS2 seal and deal funding, whatever it is.
Yeah, they're still funding.
Oh, the community and enterprise fund. Yeah, we can take that away. Right. As I said earlier, there are employees here hoping to see their loved one shortly after 10 o'clock, so I'm calling this a day. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Well done, Dan. Well done, Graham.
Thank you, Philip. It's very much appreciated.